Hey guys, it's Taylor. Welcome back to another video. I'm just going to test this quickly. Check that we are in fact live. Okay, so my sound's working, which is amazing. So this video is going to be about how to get out of a rut. If you like where this is going, please click the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell. I have quite a few plans for this channel, and I will be doing a lot more stuff with it in the future. Just double check that it's working. Cool. All right. Hey Emily, how are you? I hope everyone's doing well on this lovely Sunday afternoon, evening, which is really nice. And to be honest, I wanted to make this video because I'm having a lot of conversations with some of my friends and people around me, and it seems to be a pretty common theme. Hello. It seems to be a common theme that a lot of people are getting quite overwhelmed with media overload. It is the time we're living right now. No other human before us has had to deal with so much information and different media coming our way. So we have access to so many different things with our phones, on the internet, on TV, in cinemas, if you still go to them. There's so many different ways that we can be kind of like hijacked with a bunch of conflicting messages. And our brain is still, we still have the reptilian part of our brain that hasn't quite evolved out of the flight or fight response. So generally when we are overstimulated, sometimes that can activate the flight or fight response. And of course, if you continually activate that flight or fight response, you might find yourself getting into a little bit of a rut. Now, this video I'm aiming for this video to kind of help people out of like a mild rut. If you do need professional help, go and seek your local therapist or something like that if you do need a little bit of deeper work. This is just kind of some tips of things that you can do to kind of help your way through this really uncertain time in our world that everyone is feeling everywhere. And I hope you kind of enjoy this. So to get started, I would say if you want to get out of a rut, you need to identify that you're actually in a rut and notice that you're feeling a little bit more differently to how you usually are, or if you've noticed that your base frequency and your base moods have shifted quite a bit. So if you're feeling like a little bit more down than usual, or a little bit more anxious than usual, or a little bit more just like negative, that can probably indicate that you are in a rut. And I've noticed that earlier this year, especially with some of like the lockdown stuff, I have noticed myself go into a bit of a rut. Yeah, so totally, I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed, and that's totally been my experience over the past few months, especially when I'm not very conscious of how much media I'm consuming. I tend to feel very overwhelmed. And this is why I wanted to make this video, because we're all getting lots of messages from lots of different places, lots of conflicting lots of conflicting information. Yeah. Okay, so in the future, I will be reading the comments. So if you do have a comment, feel free to put it out into the chat box and I will read it out as well. So that's my first kind of tip, is to identify that you're actually in a rut. And the two, seek professional help if you do need it, if it's not a rut and it's actually like a problem. Number 3 is, before you do anything about kind of moving yourself out of a rut, you need to accept that it's happening. I think some people, they're like feeling a little bit more negative, but they won't accept that there's been a shift in like how they feel. So I think people need to learn how to be okay with where they're at, rather than just like push their kind of like observations to the side. So I think observing how you're feeling can be a really good, great way to start moving yourself out of the rut if you have been feeling more overwhelmed. So definitely meet yourself where you're at in how you're feeling. And the next thing you could do is identify potential triggers for why you've gone into a bit of a rut. And then what you can do from there, when you've identified what's triggered this for you, you can kind of start to work to renegotiate your relationship to your triggers, to situations or to relationships that have kind of caused you to kind of enter more of a negative zone. So I just wanted to talk about my own personal example. So like I said earlier, a few months ago, I was just on the news like all the time. I'm sure a lot of us are like checking in with what's happening, because it is affecting us so much with what's going on in the media. Like, you know, all the snap lockdowns. It doesn't matter where you are. It's like you have to be on it. Otherwise you could find yourself in a really weird place. Yeah. I think it's good to be aware, but so someone just wrote in the comments, they never watch the news, which I think is great. Sometimes when I'm before the lockdowns and I was doing a bit of interstate travel, I actually did have to be aware of the news because of the snap lockdowns. So I think in that case, you do need to be like aware. But apart from that, most of the things that are on the news don't really affect us. So for my example, for renegotiating my relationship, two triggers was that a few months ago, my trigger was that I was watching way too much news from like multiple sources, but I was like checking in all the time, and it really kind of made me feel just like overwhelmed and like everything was too much. And especially when all of these stories and things are out of your personal control, it's not actually helpful for you to be like checking in all the time, because to an extent it can trigger like a physiological response of how you feel, and then you've kind of got to deal with that. So for example, I sometimes, when I'm not being very mindful, I'll open my phone straight away and just look through things. And that isn't a great way for me personally to start my day. So now what I do is, instead of looking at my phone, like as soon as I wake up, I will take out a physical book and read because that kind of, especially a positive book, I'm reading a really great book at the moment called Path of Empowerment. And it kind of just puts me in like a really good vibe for the rest of the day. And then when I've kind of like woken up and I'm a little bit more not as groggy, I can kind of then look on and then be a little bit more aware and conscious of what's actually going into my mind on a subconscious level, because that is what media does. And my other point is, if your trigger is situational, what can you do to change either the situation, your reaction to it, or is it something that you actually need to accept that you can't control? I'm not quite sure if I have an example for this. I think for me, like, this is probably what most people are feeling at the moment, is that in Australia, when people are going and panic buying, sometimes when I've gone into Woolworths or whatever and all the shelves are empty, it kind of makes me feel like I'm in an apocalypse movie, and then that's obviously doesn't provoke great emotions in me. So that is like a trigger you can't exactly change. So rather than like feeling like, oh, we're like living in a weird film, I kind of accept that's probably is going to be what it is. And then before I enter the situation, I kind of like mentally prepare myself. That's probably what I'm going to see. And it's probably going to be really either confronting or just downright annoying. And then I will go into it anyway. And then I won't feel as kind of like about it if I'm like not consciously aware of the trigger itself. And it's had another comment. Yeah, I look at my phone too much and it's like a bad zombie movie. Yeah, like some of the things that are occurring today are just so absurd. And sometimes I wonder if things are going to become less absurd. And then I see something else, which is even more absurd. And I'm at the point now where it's some of like the memes and the videos that are coming out are like a bad zombie movie or just a bad meme. And yeah, of course, if it's not too serious and it's just like, I don't know, someone wearing a mask over their eyes, it's kind of like, it's funny, just like have a laugh. And that can be another way to kind of deal with any triggers that are putting you in a rut, is that sometimes it's just so good to have a laugh. It releases a lot of good physical like happiness hormones, and it just makes you feel a little bit lighter, and it's a really good way to release your emotions. Okay, so I'm going to go through some common triggers that I've noticed with like people around me and like friends and stuff. And I think it's pretty timely for this particular moment. I don't know if you guys are experiencing this. I've said a couple of them already. So like media overload is the most obvious one. Procrastination, a lot of people are at home. So I notice sometimes when I'm at home, I'm a lot better now, but before all of this stuff kind of happened, I would say go to the library or take myself out of my house to go do my work. And then that was kind of my way of zoning in on what I had to do. Like all through uni, I would just literally camp out at the library until all my assessments were done. And then I would go home. And that was like my chill zone. So that was how I compartmentalized different tasks that I had to do. But of course now, like a lot of people are working from home. So procrastination might be like your thing that's like putting you in a rut, because you might rest all day and then you go, oh, I've got this thing to do. And then you'll feel bad about yourself because you didn't spend earlier in the day doing it. So that could be like a thing that maybe a lot of people are dealing with. Another thing could be, an eating habit. Maybe you're eating something that's like not good for you, and you enjoy it when you're eating it, but then you feel like trash afterwards. So that could be another trigger, because if you keep repeating certain cycles or habits that aren't serving you, that could make you feel like a bit down in other areas of your life as well. And another trigger could be a potential relationship dynamic that's not serving you. It could be, like anyone can have a toxic relationship with any person. So as long as like relationships are remaining balanced and giving on both ends and kind and compassionate, that's like really important. So if you are having issues with like a friend or someone, and one end of the spectrum is like they're giving too much or you're giving too much and the other person isn't doing so well, that might be a dynamic that does trigger you to feel not so great. So I hope those triggers are helpful. Maybe if you've experienced that, I hope it might explain, maybe potentially if you're trying to get out of a rut, that might be why you're on this video. So now I've gone through the kind of like stuff like, okay, we're in a rut. Now what do we do? Now what do we do is focus on habits, situations, and hobbies that lift your base frequency, and then try and eliminate, reduce, or renegotiate and heal the things that have led you to being in a rut. So what does that look like? For me, again, with the phone, I was scrolling too much as soon as I woke up. So I made a conscious effort to wake up and read a book. And that being disciplined with that actually made me feel really, really good in the mornings versus like, meh, oh, I'm just like on my phone again. And then the more you like kind of nail those habits, the better you will feel and the more motivated you'll probably feel in other areas as well. And I guess the main goal of this video is I hope that I can help you step into your power. So when we're in a rut, we're probably feeling a lot of fear and overwhelm. And feeling fear and anxiety literally hijacks your brain, and it lowers your intelligence, especially in regards to modern triggers. So all of the mechanisms in our brain are designed to help us if we're getting attacked by a lion. Yeah, so I just had another comment. When I'm overwhelmed with something, I try to get that something out of the way. After that, I feel better. I think that's a great way to deal with overwhelm, especially if you have a task to do. Just doing it and getting it off your mind is a really great way to feel better. I think a perfect example of that is like if you have an assignment at uni and it's like, I don't know, 50% essay, and then you know it's going to be a lot of work and you sit down and you do it, submit it, done. And then you're just like, yes, loving life. And you feel accomplished because you have like done something and you've grown in some way as well. But yeah, so that's what the point of this video is, to help you step into your power. So back onto the modern triggers. Our brain is kind of designed, so if we perceive a threat, like a lion running at us, our brain will release all of these chemicals to make us run away like really fast. And it pumps a lot of cortisol into our body. So it rediverts our energy into our physical form and our extremities to get away. And then it stops sending energy to like digestion and stuff like that, where you need to be in a rest state to do those things properly. So how that relates to modern triggers is that if you're in like an office job and you get an email from a boss that triggers that stress response because you've got to reply to it, or you've got to make a lot of things happen to make your boss happy or something like that, your body releases all the same triggers as what it would if you were being chased by a lion. But when you're in an office job, you don't actually, you don't run away, and you don't have the physical satisfaction to those initial stress chemicals. So you've just got all those stress chemicals just running around in your body while you're typing out this email. And then even after you've sent the email or whatever you've got to do, you haven't actually resolved the physical issue like that's circulating in your body. So that's why it does make you dumber in a sense, because you're being taken out of your analytical brain into your like physicality of having to run away. So that's why we've got to be mindful of like fear-based media, because it literally to an extent can provoke that response. So we want to step out of fear, which fear is just false evidence appearing real, and into a state of awareness. So how can we cultivate a state of awareness? Well, there's like lots of ways you can do it. For me personally, I like to meditate, and I've been trying to meditate daily. I love to use Insight Timer, which is a free app you can get on your phone. There's a pro version if you want to pay, and there's like loads and loads of really amazing meditations. But I find the free one is like just perfect. And what I find meditation does for me is it helps me check in with my body to actually see what's going on. So it kind of grounds me back into my body. And sometimes out of those like racing thoughts and, fear-based thoughts, And if you are having one of those flight or fight responses, if you can take the lessons that meditations give you and kind of apply those lessons in that situation, you might be able to turn that kind of response off. And that's like really hard to do. I've like never, I think it's easier to prevent kind of racing thoughts and a physical response to stress before the physical response has happened, because it's kind of like a snowball. If you're feeling like really stressed and then you're like, oh, just meditate, you're probably racing your thoughts too much. So that's why meditation is good to prevent these really overwhelming states in the long run. But it also, you can find emergency meditations that take you out of that overwhelmed state like immediately. I also find Qigong is also really, really great for overwhelm. I remember the night before I got my HSC, I was so like nervous about what mark I was going to get. And then my dad showed me this video of this dude from Bondi doing Qigong. And I was quite on edge. And then after I did the Qigong movements, it totally just like chilled out my physiology. So definitely try meditation or Qigong. And I just got another comment. I love ASMR. ASMR is also really, really good if you are overwhelmed, because like everyone loves different types of ASMR. And they just said ASMR helps my anxiety 100%. That is so true. It really does. And there's also a lot of ASMR like meditations as well. So pretty much whatever you need, it's out there for free on the internet, and it's really, really amazing. And if you think ASMR is weird, like some people don't respond to it well, but again, these are all just suggestions for you to try out and experiment with yourself. Another one, a really important one, is to connect with nature. So if you can go outdoors, if you can get sunlight, if you can eat as much fresh food as possible, and also having a digital detox. We live in an age of digital overstimulation. So I noticed that my thought patterns are a little bit more hectic if I don't have a break from my phone, from like working on my laptop, listening to music while I'm on a run, watching TikTok if I've got like a spare 5 minutes. If I've like spent the whole day just like rotating from digital platform to digital platform, because I do like work from home as well. So if I don't have a total break from something digital, I notice that I'm a little bit more like hectic. So that's why I make an effort to, like, if I'm eating breakfast, maybe I won't put a YouTube video on in the background. Or if I am going for a walk, I leave the headphones in the car and I literally just don't have any digital stimulation, because it will help calm your thoughts as well. I know it does for me. And it's also just like a bit of a buffer against all of the digital media overload. And just hit my light. This is off my ring light. If you are enjoying this video so far, please give it a like. And then we can move on to another point, which is to connect with others. I know that sounds kind of ironic at this point in time, but don't isolate yourself in the sense that you can still talk to people, like on Zoom, on the phone, on YouTube, wherever. You can still connect with people. So actively messaging people, ringing people is really important, because that can really lift you out of a bad state if you are in a negative frame of mind. And what's another one? Actively learn something new and like read a physical book. This kind of relates back to my digital overstimulation kind of point, because we have so many screens around us, and it's kind of the first time in history that it's happened. So we actually don't know how this is all going to affect us like a really long time down the road. So giving kind of ourselves a break from having screens in front of us too much can actually help chill us out a lot more. And I personally just love reading a book just for like the feel of it as well. And I noticed that I'm able to focus for much longer periods when I have been reading physical books. um, yeah, so that's another point. And then another one is just do something for the sake of fun and pure creativity, and do things that you enjoyed doing as a kid when you didn't have like a goal behind it. So I know when I was little, I used to draw for hours and hours on end. So if I'm feeling just like a bit meh, sometimes I'll just go and draw. Like it's not something that I put a goal over, it's just literally for the sake of just having fun. And that obviously looks different for everyone. Like sometimes I feel like playing my guitar. For someone else, it might be, I don't know, playing a different type of instrument, or I like painting sometimes. Or if you're not really into the arts, I don't know, playing chess or a board game or Catan or something like that. And just doing something for the sake of it, for the fun of it, can really just give your inner child just like so many good vibes and, you know, just make life a lot more enjoyable. Moving on. Yeah, so another person just wrote, when I procrastinate, I watch TV or play a little game on my phone. Yeah, like that's sometimes it's good to like watch things just for the enjoyment. I notice it becomes a problem though, like if I'm just watching it to like avoid something. So again, all that like conscious awareness of the intention behind the action, I think is like the most important thing. So like watching TV or playing games isn't like bad, but like if you use it to procrastinate or just kind of avoid doing things, then it can be harmful like to you. But it's also like, you know, it's situational, and kind of you have to make up your own mind if it's helpful to you or detrimental. Another one is exercise or move your body in any way that you can. So like for me, I used to go to the gym a lot. That was kind of like my favorite thing. And then obviously the lockdowns happened, and then that was kind of like done for a bit. And then I will kind of move to yoga or walking or running or qigong, or, you know, just if I'm at my desk and working, I'll like stretch out a bit and stuff. And you can do chair yoga. So really moving at all at whatever level you're at is so great, and making that mind to body connection, mind body spirit connection is super important. And it's great for your health and in for preventative health. And another one that seems like kind of, we're getting more into like my weird points. So I think everything I've said until now has been like, oh yeah, you know, just like take care of yourself. But now we're going to get into some weird points. Yay. And Slightly Crazy Vegan just said, I go for walks in the creek, which is amazing. And especially like going into like water, like in a creek or in the ocean, you get all those negative ions in your body, because there's like this chemical reaction when you go into the water and stuff. That's really good for you. So that's amazing. And okay, weird point. Give yourself a challenge to give you something, to give you a new sense of growth. So especially like if you're in a rut, you might just be feeling like meh and like not super motivated, and maybe you're not feeling like too great about yourself. So giving yourself a little bit of a challenge, no matter how big or small it is, like take it at your own pace, it might just like help you like, you know, perk up a little bit and be like, yeah, like cool, I did something. Like for me, when I was starting to get a little bit overwhelmed with all of the news and all of like really fear-based stuff online, giving myself the challenge of meditating every day, you know, after 15 days, I was like, wow, like not only have I gotten the benefits of doing it every day and I noticed a difference in my general state of being, but I also was like, you know, that kind of complex of like, yeah, I did it every day. So that can kind of give you a bit of a boost as well. So yeah, so Slightly Crazy Vegan just said not always in the water. Sorry, I think it's hard to be in the water all the time. I notice that a lot. So I'm not too far from a beach, but I can't always get down to the water, and I prefer to be down at the water, but it doesn't always happen. So I know what you mean. Like I'd rather always be at the water, but it doesn't always happen. So moving on to another point. Recognize the power of your own mind. So if you don't take the responsibility of your sovereignty as like a human being, it can and more than likely will be used to create someone else's dream. So this body we're in is literally like a supercomputer, and your consciousness in your brain is like telling your body basically how to operate on various levels. So if you don't like recognize your own power and that you can like program your brain to become the superhuman that you want to be, there are other things out there that know that this is like how powerful you are. And this has happened throughout history. Like, if you don't take sovereignty of yourself and you let someone else influence you, and you let other things or people or like entities or companies or something like that override your sovereignty, sorry, you'll feel it. And that's maybe why you're in a rut. If you're not taking back your power and taking responsibility for yourself and what you put into your body and what you feed into your body on a spiritual, mental, and physical level, you will feel it. And it's not going to feel good because it's not what is a part of your soul calling. So Grant in the comments just said, hi Taylor, hope you're well. I hope you're well too. I found spending time with my nieces and nephews can lift my mood instantly and change my perspective. That's lovely. And that's a really great point. Spending time with family when you can is always really, really beautiful and can always lift your mood and also get us out of our own heads sometimes. Sometimes most of our problems are just us getting in our own way as well. So that's kind of like my weird point, is to recognize your like power as a human being and just all the amazing things that you do with your body. So someone just wrote in the comments, spending time with their family doesn't always help. So I think that kind of goes back to my main point. So yeah, unfortunately, not all of our relationships are super nourishing. So we have to kind of become aware of that and change any dynamics if we can for the better, and to always live in compassion and to do what's best for ourselves and for other people as well. So that will kind of differ from person to person. Okay, so my next point is, I feel like a broken record, but honestly, like these things are quite simple, but we don't always do them. So that's why I'm repeating myself. My next point is feed yourself, your body, mind, and spirit with all the good things. So one of the things that I like to do is feed myself empowering music. One of the things I've noticed in the last like decade or so is that in a lot of popular music, the like literacy level of like popular music has like gone down to, I think, like an average of like someone like a kid who's 7 can like understand the lyrics. So for like adults, it's not that intellectually stimulating. So recently I've actually been going back a few decades and been listening to, you know, like Led Zeppelin, also like a lot of indie music still uses a lot of poetry in their lyrics. And I'm really trying to like seek out music that kind of stimulates my brain rather than dumb my brain down. Like, I'm not saying all popular music is like that, but I think we can all agree that not all popular music is like a poetic work of art. I mean, you know, like, like I think one of some, you know, like I bought my peaches out in Georgia. Wow, that's a poetic piece of work right there. Like, I'm so intellectually stimulated. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just like something I've noticed like across the board. Like, there's just music, the lyrics, and the way that popular music is generally constructed, like, it makes me want more of like a ballad or a story or something that is more open for interpretation, which is why I'm going back and listening to music from like Led Zeppelin, or I'm listening to like Bach more often again. So yeah, seek out music that is empowering and satisfying to your mind. Just to note before people say popular music is like fine and great. I do love popular music. I always listen to it, like, especially for the beat and stuff. And, you know, I do like popular music, but I don't like listening to it on repeat all the time. I just find some of the repetitions of the same line again and again and again. It's just like, can we put something different in there? But that's all. So I do love popular music. Don't come for me. And yeah, okay. So another one is fill your mind with empowering media, or at least be aware of what you are watching. Please. So this is just me being pedantic because this is what I studied for like at UCID. But this is kind of like really interesting because the degree I did, people are always like, it's like stigmatized as like something that you can't get a job out of. But then when you actually think about it, if you think about how much time you spend watching something, people spend a lot of time watching TV. Like, everything they're digesting into their subconscious, whether they like it or not, is having an effect on their lives and influencing their thoughts, the ideologies they choose to take on. And what I learned at uni was how to deconstruct it and understand what is in front of me and really criticize it. So I learned a lot about genre, like the history of film, and different like academic scholarship behind different trains of thought, schools of thought, and stuff like that, and a lot of philosophy stuff. So like, that's why, oh, you won't get a job with an arts degree. I'm like, at least I can understand what I can see, or at least think I can deconstruct it. So yeah, so that's kind of what I learned. And what I think is imperative in this day and age, and this is going to sound weird, but if we're spending all of this time, I don't know how long you spend on your phone. How long do you spend on your phone? I know I spend way too much time on my phone. How long do you spend watching Netflix? Because seriously, everything you're putting into your brain has a purpose behind its creation. Whether you like it or not, there's always an agenda. There's always an agenda, whether it's good or bad. There's always a reason why it was made. Nothing is pure entertainment. If you're like just putting Netflix on just to like chill out and relax from the day, that is like when you're most programmable, honestly. And this is why the arts have always been underestimated, because people are literally feeding themselves with the information, and like, whether you like it or not, you probably should learn how to understand it, or at least deconstruct it to an extent. Now, of course, not all media is like harmful and stuff, but I think it's really important that we understand what is happening in front of us. Sorry, I get really passionate about this. I don't know if other people find this, but when, you know, you watch something and you're like, did I just see that? Now this goes for the news, this goes for Instagram, this goes for TikTok, this goes for YouTube, Netflix, everything, literally everything. There's always an agenda behind something. There's always a history attached to it. Filmmakers just don't put things there on the screen for no purpose, especially in big productions. There's a lot of money behind big productions, so you need to understand why it's in front of you. So this is what I wanted to talk about, because maybe you're in a rut because of what you're watching. Maybe that's why. Maybe you're on TikTok all day and you're on a really bad side of TikTok and it's putting some really negative thoughts into your subconscious that maybe you don't agree with it, but you know, you're thinking about it, and that affects the rest of your that affects the thoughts that are going through your brain. So I just wanted to give some questions to ask yourself. I might talk a little bit more about this. This is a very big subject. Like, it's a whole section of academia. So yeah, so Slightly Crazy Vegan just wrote in the comments, it's like when you see something on TV and you know it's untrue because you have experience, and then you hear others repeating what the TV show says and you're like, what, WTF? Totally. That's so true. Yeah, it's like that whispers game. You can really cut things to look very different to what they are in real life, because there's a language of media. There's a whole language. Every different genre, every different method to take in media has a different message. And there's a lot of like philosophy behind this. And even just something as simple as like, maybe you were at an event and you saw X happen, and then you go home and the news said that you were at this event that you were at, and then they say something totally different happened, and you know it didn't happen because you were there, but it's been cut to look a certain way. We need to be aware of that, and it's really, really important today. Very, very important today. So I just wanted to give you some questions to ask yourself. I might even make like a little bit of maybe an ebook or something like that, something to give you to kind of take away and maybe do a little bit of workshopping with yourself. Yeah, so planting seeds is always better. So it's great to question people and question what you're seeing and help other people question what they're seeing. And then Grant just said, yes, I agree totally. I don't own a phone and haven't turned on the TV for the last 3 months. I'm careful with what I take in. And that is like amazing. That's so amazing. I know so many people at the moment that they're just not watching, you know, the news, for example. They're just fed up. They're not, you know, just the same carousel of fearful emotions that they're pulling around people. A lot of people are just done with it, and they're aware that it's potentially not serving them, so they've just switched it off. And that's what people have the power to do. We have the power to switch things off and move to something else. So yeah, so I'm going to give you some questions. These might sound a little bit very open, but these questions are designed for you to ask yourself when you are on different media platforms, whether that be YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, the news, blah, 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 whatever, movies, Netflix, whatever. So they're very general. So the first question is, what is in the frame? What is actually in the frame that you're seeing right now? And how do those things in the frame relate to each other? And what's the impression they give you? So for example, I am in the frame, in the middle of the shot, I take up 1/3, but I'm in the center. Like, that just seems really obvious. Like, it doesn't really mean much, right? But if you think YouTube live, I'm the focus, you're watching me. Like, I'm the focus here, so watch me. Right? So that's and like the walls behind me, I've kept the background quite simple, so you focus on me. That's very intentional. That's just one example. That's the format of a YouTube live. The purpose of that is so you watch me only. So there we go. Film analysis 101. I'm eating too. Does that count? Yeah, eating, like, what we eat has a direct impact on us as well. So, like, yeah, it's a perfect example of how we can nourish ourselves on our physical level as well. So first question is, what is in the frame? Because it always matters. It's always intentional most of the time. Another question is, what's the genre? What are the conventions of the genre? So when I mean conventions, like, if you think slightly crazy vegan just wrote Buddha bowl. That's awesome. I approve, and I'm starting to get hungry. So I actually had a kale quinoa bowl for lunch. That was really lovely. It was so good. So that's another thing. What is the genre? Like, what are the conventions of the genre of the thing you're watching? Do you think the filmmakers, the journalists, or whoever made it are trying to break the conventions of the genre, or are they conforming to the conventions of the genre? Why? Why are they doing this? Like, why do the filmmakers, why do the journalists do what they do? Seems like a really weird question, but I'll give you an example. Okay, what's the genre? For example, let's think horror film. So the conventions of a horror film is like, they create suspense. Sometimes they hide things they hide actions from you in the film to kind of create a feeling of suspense, which is to create a feeling of fear, which you are basically buying to experience. That's how cinema works. They're selling you back your emotions to make money. So that's how that works. And if you think of, like, what's that scary film where they make fun of all the different horror films? They're like subverting the normal conventions of horror to kind of like make fun of it. So that's an example of filmmakers breaking conventions for a specific reason, to make fun of it. So that's an example. Another question. What is the philosophical message or ideological stance of the story or the thing that you're watching? So this can vary so much, but usually there are so many layers to particularly films. Like, you'll have the plot, which is what actually happens in the film, and then you'll have like the philosophical arch, like good guys always win or something like that. That's the philosophical arch, for example. And if you still think that some things are just pure entertainment, I'm going to crack your reality for you. So if everyone's familiar with the story Beauty and the Beast, like the old story Beauty and the Beast, so there are some interpretations that story, right? So Belle, or whatever her name is, gets captured by the Beast and she gets held in the tower, and then she eventually falls in love with him. Okay, it's a story we're all kind of like brought up on or whatever. Do you know what the original intention of that story was? Well, some interpretations say that story was told to young women in order to psychologically prepare them for arranged marriages. Yay! If that's your favorite movie, I'm sorry. So that is one example of a story that had an ideological purpose to get a particular portion of the society ready for some obligation that they had to fill later on in their lives. So, and Beauty and the Beast also has many incarnations in different cultures as well. Oh, so I'll just repeat the story. Someone in the comments missed it. So Beauty and the Beast, you know how Belle gets captured by the Beast and she gets locked in the tower or whatever, the castle, and she eventually falls in love with the Beast and they end up together. So, And that's like a super mass-produced story. And there are some interpretations that that story was written in order to get young women psychologically prepared for the arranged marriages that they would have to endure later on in life. And that story has different incarnations, I think, in other cultures. So that seemingly innocent childhood story that we're told in films actually had a specific ideological purpose. So if that's your favorite movie, sorry. Yeah, so just to think that stories don't mean anything is kind of like a little bit naive and just wrong, basically. So always ask yourself, what is the philosophical message or ideological stance of this story? Usually your feelings give you like a really good indicator of what the stance of the story is, because you've literally been manipulated to feel a certain way. So if you can kind of like unpack that and investigate that, then that will kind of help you kind of disarm the kind of mystery around it. So I'll use the Beauty and the Beast example again. But another question is to ask yourself is, how does this message of what I'm watching, the reason I think this was made, how does this media product relate to myself or others? So example of Beauty and the Beast, it's told to young girls to condition them to think that it's okay to be, I don't know, shipped off into an arranged marriage. And its purpose was to be told again and again to kind of reinforce that ideal. Slightly Crazy Vegan wrote, Nemo tried to teach kids not to have fish as pets, but it backfired. Yeah, like that is true. Some films, like the society misses the memo or is just too kind of down a certain lane of thinking to kind of acknowledge that level of the story. And it's like Babe. I think there's a meme. It's like, if you understood the film Babe, you should be vegan, because obviously everyone's rooting for Babe when they're watching the film, and then they go into like another situation where it's societally normal to eat animals, and then they forget what the message was of the film. So that's actually a really good example of like competing and emerging ideologies in film and media. So that's what media is supposed to do, like change ideas and stuff. So thank you for bringing that up. I love Nemo. It was such a good film. And so yeah, especially you can use this question, how does this message relate to myself or others? It can work well for the news, because it obviously is supposed to directly relate to the public. Another question is, what is the thing you're watching? What is it glorifying, and what is it shaming, and why? Why? Why does it have this stance? What is it saying about this? So I watched this really horrible, I don't know if you've watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but there's this like woman in it who, I think she's like an adult in real life, but she is like hanging out with Brad Pitt or something, and she's really, really objectified. There's like lots of really inappropriate shots of her, and she's cast as like underage, and it's really weird. And that's an example of like, what is it glorifying? It's glorifying the objectification of young women. That's weird. So yeah, investigating things like that are important, because then we can become more aware of like what the hell is going on in society. And my favorite question, who paid for it? And yeah, who paid for it? Follow the money. See what production companies made it. See what did Pixar make it? Did Disney make it? Who made it? Who paid for it? That goes for the news as well. It goes for, YouTube as well. Like YouTube is like the algorithm. So that's kind of, I guess, what's paying for YouTube. I guess there's all these different algorithms that generate views. So yeah, who paid for it? You know, in science, that's a dead giveaway to who funded the study. That can be the difference between a conflict of interest or a legit study. So we can use that kind of mentality of, you know, legitness by checking out who paid for it. Yeah, so a couple of comments. Chicken Run 2 is another example of how people have missed the mark on how animals feel things. And then, yeah, Slightly Crazy Vegan just said she's seen Once Upon a Time but didn't remember that part. You know, I felt uncomfortable the first time I watched it, and then it came up again in my TikTok feed, and I was like, and then it broke down exactly what happened. I was like, yeah, that is really messed up, that scene. It's really weird. Especially like post Me Too. I'm really surprised it even made the cut, to be honest. Yeah, so that's kind of like most of my questions. Another thing you can ask yourself is, how does the media piece make you feel? Again, if it makes you feel fearful, I don't know, maybe it's trying to hijack your mind. If it makes you feel icky, confused, or fearful, you need to ask yourself if it's serving your highest good. Yeah, so that's kind of like my media spiel. So one person told me that he felt sorry for raccoons after he watched Over the Hedge. Yeah, that's a good movie. I haven't watched that for so long, but I think kids' movies like have a lot of kind of conflicting ideology in them. I just started watching The Last Airbender, like an anime, and Aang is like vegetarian, and I love that. And then one of the other characters eats a lot of meat and like goes fishing a lot, and it's really weird because it's like conflicting ideology within one show. So media always can represent like conflicting ideologies amongst different people within one show, which is really interesting. But yeah, so that's my little spiel on media. I hope you find this beneficial, asking yourself these questions. I've been noticing in mainstream media like some really weird stuff, like listening to programs that are supposed to follow a certain convention. Like I was listening to a radio program and it was a scientific one, and it was really strange because the host was talking, and usually in a scientific recording of like a radio show, the host always signs off, right? The host always says, "Thank you very much for listening. That's my point, and good night, goodbye." But it like didn't. It just faded out as she was saying stuff. And I was like, well, what did I just hear? This is really weird. And it kind of made me question everything else she said before, because the program didn't live up to the kind of structured genre conventions it was claiming to fulfill. So, and that made me ask a few more questions. So I think there's a lot of that going on at the moment in terms of media consumption, and when a certain agenda or ideology is being pushed, if you don't understand what is being presented to you, it can very easily make your way into your subconscious. So that's why I'm like banging on about this, because it's actually really important, because we spend so much time looking at it, and whether we like it or not, it's going into our subconscious mind and having an effect. So yes, that's my spiel. Also, back to the main arc of this live is to how to get out of a rut. As you're making all these changes, anticipate some resistance or inertia. For example, say that I give you these questions and then you start questioning, I don't know, your favorite show that's actually maybe a bit dark and maybe not so constructive. Maybe it objectifies women a little bit too much for your liking, and you didn't really notice it before, and now it kind of makes you feel a bit icky. Maybe you feel a little bit annoyed that you're kind of like aware of it. And that's an example of like resisting changes that actually are going to serve you and your highest good. So anticipate resistance or inertia as you are making changes that you know mentally are going to help you in the long run. Like when we all start eating healthier, our body is wired to crave unhealthy foods because that's what it's been eating for a while, per se. And then when you start eating healthy, you kind of still crave those unhealthy foods, but you know mentally that they're not good for you. So that's another example of that sort of inertia. And my final point is that this too shall pass, this rut shall pass. Life is an ebb and flow. And the natural order of peace, harmony, compassion will always prevail in yourself as well as the outer world. Comment, I really like that show, but watching it recently, they call women, so I don't think I'm going to say it, but the S, something shaming, you know what I mean, all the time, but by other women. They call each other that word, and I really hate how it's normalizing it. Yeah, it's kind of, with like women's empowerment, it's very, I still feel like no matter how far feminism goes, women are still made to feel like everything they do is like wrong. Like I don't really like that term. I think in that case it's women owning the term that has been used against them in order to empower themselves, as if they like own it. Sometimes it works against women, I guess. If it's all the time, like, it's kind of not that. Maybe that's internalized misogynism. I'm not sure. Even that, I'm like so confused. I don't even know if that is like hyper politicized as well, and just everything can be called internalized misogynism these days. Oh, okay. So they just said, but they use it to degrade other women. Okay, so I was thinking more in like, you know how Australians call each other horrible names as a term of endearment? If it's being actively used to degrade other women, then that's not on. That's not great. So just because it's a woman who says it to another woman, it's still not great. And I think in that case, it is a form of internalized misogynism. So, misogynism? Yeah. So, in the world, nuts. I think that's just me in every video that I've made in the past like few weeks. It's just been like, isn't the world crazy right now? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not going to say that. I don't know if I'll be censored by YouTube, but yeah. Aussies say certain words that are really horrible, and probably a lot of Americans would be like, what? But they do. Aussies call each other horrible names sometimes as like a term of endearment. So on that note, those are my tips for how to get out of a rut. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you find it useful. If you do want to learn more about some of the techniques that I've learned, how to kind of analyze media in front of you, and some sort of certain schools of thought and film philosophy, let me know in the comments, because I do really like talking about it. And I do think it's really, really important that we need to be media literate in these day and ages. So yes, I will check in with you soon, and please like this video and subscribe and click the notification bell. Until next time, guys, chill out and look after yourselves. Also, if you have any questions that you would like me to answer in the next live, I am planning to bring back the regular Sunday lives. Let me know in the comments, or message me on Instagram or TikTok or wherever. And if you have any topics you would like me to cover, please let me know that as well. Much love. and have an amazing night. Bye.